Welcome to this session. I'm Jochen, and in this session, it's all about facilitating ideation sessions as a PM, or in other words, how to transform a world of fuzzy ideas into a plan your team loves to take action on. So a few words about myself. I work in product for 12 years now. I started in retail software, then I moved over to a software as a service company offering B2B solutions in the search space. And now I'm working at eBay Classifieds in Germany for a site called eBay Kleinanzeigen. I work there in an awesome team that focuses on user acquisition and brand love. So I would like to share some best practices around ideation sessions. And often as a product manager, you will find yourself confronted with a challenge. There could be a business problem to solve or a usability problem, for instance. And to do that in a structured way, you usually zoom in on the problem first and try to understand as much as possible before you go into solution mode. And while you start to gain a decent amount of knowledge around the problem, some possible solutions usually appear kind of naturally in your head. So you have a problem and some rough ideas on how to solve it. But you want to be sure that you're actually striving for the best possible approach as a team. And to achieve that, you'll need to manage a certain balance of knowing what you want while being open and flexible at the same time. Now, this sounds like a contradiction, but it's actually not. And I would like to show you how you could approach this. So to facilitate ideation sessions, I recommend to go through 4 phases. The first one is called context and orientation. That's the preparation work of your workshop. The second one is called setting the stage. That focuses on the first minutes of your workshop, which is a very critical phase. And ideation and refinement is basically the creative part of the session. And that is followed by alignment and decision making, which obviously is also a very crucial element of every ideation session with a real outcome. So let's start with the first phase, context and orientation. So when you think about ideation sessions, it makes a lot of sense to make people familiar with the specific challenge long before the actual workshop is about to happen. Provide context by, for instance, find consensus on current state versus desired state. Also make sure everyone feels welcome and needed, and don't hesitate to think about giving homework to some of your teammates up front. The more your audience has elaborated and identified with the challenge at hand, the better the results will be in the end. So when in preparation mode, rely on data. It's important to find a good mix of summarizing the problem using words while showcasing data to back up assumptions. And if you think buy-in might be critical, you might want to reach out to more senior people in your organization to co-host the first minutes of your session, just to signal its relevancy to the overall company objectives. So now, the better you have structured the problem before the ideation session, the easier it actually gets to find the right solutions. And the best way to get hold of a problem is formatting it into a problem statement. And once you have drafted your first problem statement, get feedback on it as fast as possible and as early as possible, and actually as often as possible. So this is where it gets really interesting. And to add some meat to the bone, I'll provide a rough example for that. So this is how your problem statement could look like. And imagine this all happens before your workshop starts. So the first thing is you clarify the observation. Here, the observation is a decline in signed-up users. And then you clarify who's actually involved in the problem and in what's the context of that. In this example, it's all about new or returning visitors not having an account, and actually eventually they should enter the registration flow in the product, but somehow do not. And so you can provide assumptions for underlying reasons of the problem. That could be bad on-site communication, for example. And what's critical is that you estimate the impact. So this way you can quantify the cost of not doing. If you know the cost of not doing anything against the problem, that's very helpful to get additional buy-in. In this example, I translated the severity of the problem into some monetary value. This can help a lot sometimes. And as a product manager, it always makes sense to come up already with a possible solution. In this example, I assume the registration flow needs a revision. So far, you specified and shaped or maybe even reshaped the problem by including all relevant stakeholders up front. Everyone should be on the same page so far in terms of the what, why, the impact, and possible solutions. And now we are entering the second phase of starting the actual workshop called setting the stage. So to create an open conversation, which is what you really need for such a session, everyone should know each other for sure. That's a no-brainer. So what also helps is to ask everyone about his or her expectations towards this session. This also is a good icebreaker and also makes people align on the next 1 or 2 hours. And after some introduction words, it's totally on you to clearly state the desired outcome of the workshop. As a product manager in such a situation, it's very important that you clearly state what you want to get out of such a meeting. And then you reveal the agenda, and that should basically get you there. And you can also introduce a parking lot, which is basically a blank sheet of paper that holds all open questions you would like to park for now, and you want to follow up on at a later stage. A parking lot helps you, especially in bigger groups, when you want to avoid endless circles or too detailed discussions. So that is a big time saver. And in the end, all this represents rather the organizational frame of your workshop. You might want to quickly pause here to make sure everyone is still on board. So make room for questions before diving in. So let's get to the meaty stuff and recap the problem statement. And as you gathered feedback on it beforehand, you should not get too much into discussions at this point, which helps a lot in focusing and finding solutions for you, but also for the whole team. Then it's quite a good idea to make sure your problem statement is kind of connected to the higher level goals of your organizational company. So for example, by connecting it to OKRs, your organizational key results, or the company vision or the product vision, that's very beneficial to connect the dots on that level. And again, make people feel comfortable and needed. You don't want them to listen. You want them to actively engage, which is a big difference here. And you need that level of engagement when you set the stage. So this is how the room or virtual environment should look like so far. You have collected expectations. Everyone knows the agenda. Everyone knows each other. And the problem statement is also pretty aware within the group. And of course, there's a parking lot that should be pretty empty at this point in time. Now let's make people think. Let's make them collect ideas and refine those ideas together. So this is the creative part. That's the ideation and refinement session. Now to start such a phase, sometimes it's good to think about the size of the problem. Now, if the problem is pretty broad and there might be a lot of directions in which you could go to solve it, you could consider working with the how might we method. Asking questions that start with the phrase, how might we, helps you gain additional perspectives and make people think outside of the box. In this example, the how might we question lead to new problem domains like perception of the value proposition, or user experience of the registration flow, or even challenge the concept of needing signed up users to monetize your product in the first place. But be aware that you're not defocusing the audience too much by opening up the problem space too much. So don't go too much into it, only if you feel the need for extending the scope of the problem space. In the end, you want real outcome in the end of the session. So to brainstorm on solutions, feel free to form duos or subgroups, depending on the size of your audience. And yeah, remember, a bigger audience is not a problem, as you'll encourage them to align internally in their respective subgroups. So give the group some time to explore ideas, and then make one speaker of each group present the outcome. make sure you watch the time carefully. So time boxing in this phase is super important. At this point in time, you're not so much a product manager, but a pure facilitator of the session. And once all possible solutions are covered, you want to cluster them. And maybe you cluster them during a lunch break. You don't have to do that by yourself or on your own. You might want to ask one or two teammates to help you on that. And afterwards, obviously, it makes sense to review everything together. Now, how will all this look like? It might look like this in the end. So you have a bunch of ideas collected on the board or virtual board, and some themes will emerge after clustering. And you should give each theme a name. And then it will look like this. So here in this example, it's very simple. Idea 1, 2, and 3. Obviously, you will have more speaking words for that. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to pre-qualify these ideas. And ideally, you do that by putting them into a value and effort matrix. And the best way to start this is using one idea that is broadly understood for reference. And you group that idea, you'll place it into the matrix. And if you think it's helpful, you also could feel free to help to add further labels to the ideas. So labels could represent technical feasibility or risks or budget needs and whatnot. And in the end, you might find a situation like that. So it would look like this. So we have a matrix, and you have the estimated value on the y-axis and the estimated effort on x-axis. And all this is t-shirt sizing and guessing. So don't get too academic at this point. This is a means for prioritization. This is just to get the ball rolling. And some ideas might be on the sweet spot of low effort on one side and high impact on the other side. So this is usually, these are the topics that will get a higher priority. So at this point, you are already a bit smarter. And not only you, it's the whole group that worked so far on this. So and please note, in the end, it's not about the information you collected. It's about what you do with it the next day. So welcome to alignment and decision making. And in this phase, it's very important that you are stepping a bit away from the pure facilitation role and get again back into your pure product manager role. So a lot of, your opinion should also come into play at this point again a bit. So start with a short dot voting session and prioritize together and focus on the most important ideas. Don't get confused with too many ideas at the same point. Make sure you park the not so winning ideas and focus really on the big bets and the most promising ones. And in this example, for instance, idea 3 seems to be to get the highest priority, followed by idea 4 and maybe idea 1. And it's very important to challenge that priority if you see a misfit as a product manager. This is usually the point when the session becomes a bit exciting. But it's needed from you and your role that you are capable in challenging that. So you want to include the group, but you also should feel comfortable in challenge that priority. So here we have 1, 2, and 3. And to challenge priorities, feel free to reference the idea to the pre-aligned problem statement. So is there really a fit? The good thing is you have a pretty broad understanding of the problem statement, a lot of alignment here. So it should be very easy and feel natural to connect a solution to that problem. Also, you could check against the company strategy, whether or not you can see a fit there, or the group sees a fit there. And also it's important to know, having a plan is great, but is it actionable? Make sure you address questions on timing, on team capacity, or maybe required skill set. Is that all available as you would need it to work on a solution? One of the most important things you should do at this point is guaranteeing that the outcome of your decided initiatives is measured and reflected in KPIs and key performance indicators. If you do not know which needle you move, ideally, you might think about going back to the drawing board before wasting precious time. And finally, check on risks and required additional support if you haven't done yet. So once the priority of initiatives is clear, you can define the major action items. Just focus on a bit on a higher level. Don't get in too much into the details here. It's totally fine in such a session to focus on the major milestones here. And do not forget to stress the relevancy of each single task. Eventually, you're depending on the team. So make sure their effort and commitment is honored. And I mean, making action items is very simple if you focus on what is to do, by whom, and approximately by when, and if there are any needs from others. So once the action items are clear, usually this is the time when your session ends. So conclude with next steps and provide a wrap-up, also covering key findings and decisions you took as a team. That's important that you kind of explicitly communicate also the decisions you took together. And as every session creates an opportunity for you as a product manager to become better, don't hesitate to ask for feedback. That would be my advice to you. And so thanks for listening. I hope it was helpful to you. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can do that anytime via LinkedIn. See my LinkedIn address below. Take care.